For us. Well, 10 companies have pledged to invest over 130 billion rands, which apparently now stands at just over 140 billion rands from what Jeff Radebe has just told us. These include global mining company Anglo American, which announced an investment worth 71.5 billion rand. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa says plans to lure $100 billion to the country are ahead of target. Well, to unpack what came out of today's summit, I'm joined by Economist and Executive Director of the Free Market Foundation, Louw. Leon, thanks very much for coming through. It would seem that there is a great deal of positivity around not only this summit, but a great deal of hope that things are going to get better from today onward. Is that the same sense that you are gathering?
You know about this thing was coming, so I don't know why
you don't have hope just because the president of a country says, please come and invest here. You have hope because the president of a country adopts policies that make investment attractive. Now, he has, for example, mentioned red tape. And I must caution about this. Every presidential State of the Nation address, many ministerial addresses over the last 15 years have pledged to reduce red tape, and all that's happened is it's gone up and up and up. We've been slipping down the world on the red tape index, in other words, getting worse, from something like, I forget exactly, 25, we're now below the 80s. We've been slipping down the index from about 40, in other words, in the top 30% of countries, on the Economic Freedom Index, and we're now down to 110, in other words, in the bottom 30. He has not, unfortunately, said anything concrete yet. In other words, what actually will change. What we have is the policies he's inherited, and he's giving us hope. He's being optimistic, but he now really has to stop having talk shops, and he now has to sit down with a pen and paper and say which policies are going to change, which tax rates will come down, for example, exchange control we still have. We say to foreigners, please come and invest here, but if you do, it will no longer be your money. That's effectively what it says. We need to, like all high-growth countries in the world, abolish exchange control. It's an old apartheid dinosaur introduced by Verwoerd in something like 1960, invented in its modern form by Hitler, and we're still sitting with that today. Why do they perpetuate this apartheid nonsense? He mentioned the state-owned enterprises in his address, and he said we're appointing new leadership. Now, I want to remind him we've had new leadership year after year after year after year. Leadership is not what makes the difference. It's what these state-owned enterprises actually do and what the regulations are governing the sector in which they operate. For example, we have now before us in Parliament the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan. It envisages an extreme amount of regulation of the energy sector and has in mind to replace cheap, reliable, affordable energy from coal and nuclear with unreliable, weather-dependent investment from windmills and wind farms, which people think are nice and environmentally friendly. They aren't really. We can't go into that now. But, you know, that sort of thing, we have to say, no, hold on a sec. We want an integrated resource plan, an energy plan, which is going to make energy reliable, cheap, dependable for investors who want to come back and build the smelters that have been closed, the factories that have been closed. He said that we are going to guarantee the security of people's factories if they invest. Now, he's a lawyer, and he knows that factories and land are the same thing. In South African law, the improvements are part of the land, they're attached to the land. You can't take land away without taking factories away.
Okay, can I ask you to stop right there? Because you've given us a whole list of things that haven't been done, which you believe will help turn the tide, so to speak. Let's say I accept that, that indeed remains. There are all these obstacles. But what then do you think has somewhat changed the attitude of those who have already made what Jeff Radebe says aren't just pledges, that these are actual commitments to do business in this country, and the amount as it stands is just over 140 billion rand. What do you think those people saw in spite of the things that you've listed, which you say remain problematic?
Yes, we have to. Firstly, I want to compliment him and Minister Jeff Radebe, both of whom I count amongst friends from long ago. And they're saying the right things and have the right energy and are generating the right expectations of growth. And my criticisms are not that they aren't doing that, but that they now actually have to start changing the rules of the game. Now, these investors, we don't know whether this 140 billion, which, by the way, is less than 3% of the GDP. So it sounds like a lot to you and me, but it's actually not a lot for the country as a whole.
Look, I appreciate your skepticism, and there's nothing wrong with that. But all I'm saying is, Kenny, what do you think, in your own assessment, what has led to these people? Let's just say we believe with the numbers were being given for now. Of course, we'll ask for proof a little later on. But let's just say it is what Jeff Radebe says it is.
Yes, no.
What do you think has made those people to think differently from the way they were thinking only a few months ago?
Yes, these are important business decisions, and we hope they are the beginning of much more to come. The ones that I know about, like Anglo-American, Rain and Telcoms and so on, were decisions made over many months. These decisions don't get made recently in response to, for example, an investment summit. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and that doesn't make me skeptical. I'm delighted that they took the view long ago that they were going to take a long-term view and be optimistic, and that's why they did. They thought they could make money. We do, however, have to be very clear that some of these were decisions made months or even years ago and are waiting in the pipeline for implementation. So I want to be optimistic about them, and I am. But I also, at the same time, have to be realistic and say we must understand this is a mixture of genuinely new investment and investment that was going to happen anyway.
Okay. Let me ask this differently. Do you think that the people who have made these commitments or pledges, whatever we call them, right, would have continued with or executed the decision to actually say we are indeed putting money in South Africa if we were today where we were a year ago?
Yes, I get your question, and again, it's not binary. I know of some of them. They were, in fact, made more than a year ago under the Zuma administration.
So the arrival of a Cyril Ramaphosa on stage, the talk of doing something about the mess that SOEs are in right now, all of that stuff really counts for nothing because these people would have done this anyway. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all.
What are you saying?
I'm saying that it's not simple. It's not binary. It's not Cyril Ramaphosa is the angel from heaven.
No, I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he is. All I want you to help our viewers think about is what difference has the past, 8 months or so, 10 months, what difference has the past 8 months done for our country, that which presumably we would have to do a lot of? What acknowledgements need to be made? And with that, of course, would come the responsibility of what to do next to make sure that what we're seeing now, which is still like commitments, no real proof or tangible evidence that these things are indeed going to go ahead or will happen, come tomorrow. But I just wanted to have a conversation that makes acknowledgements where acknowledgements need to be made, criticism where criticism is warranted, which is what you did right from the minute we started this conversation. But I want people out there who may not be in the same space that you are in to be a little bit clearer about how we got to the point we are in now and how we can best move forward.
Yes, I'm sorry if I gave the impression to you and the viewers that I'm critical or negative.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'm a total optimist.
Nothing wrong with that.
I think the changes you're looking for are real and good. I'm saying that what we have to do is focus on how to implement them. In other words, we have to move beyond the talk. And I'm not saying talk is cheap.
Do you believe we have the capacity and the ability to actually do that,
Absolutely.
move forward, deliver on the talk?
I think President Ramaphosa does have the right attitudes and the right views and the capacity. The question is, can he carry his supporters and his party with him? And I'm not being negative there. I'm saying this is the challenge, this is what we have to hope for, and this is what many investors believe he can do, and we're all waiting optimistically, hoping that he will do it, that he will deliver. My criticisms were not criticisms. They were a map of what he needs to do to make it real. And if he does that, then we can move. Let me just give you a very simple figure. South Africa in 1994 had about 5,000 rand per capita, $5,000 per capita income per person in South Africa. It's now about 6. In other words, we really have largely, we had a decade of high growth and then stagnated. Now, if we'd grown at the 7%, which was envisaged in various growth plans in the early 90s, we would now be one of the world's richest countries at $30,000.
And we are not. Now, importantly, what do you and I do to make sure he delivers on the promises that he has made, but at the same time, we don't close the door for those who want to come into our country and help us do the things that we believe need to be done here and now?
We do just what you are doing, which is to get the conversation to turn to what are the concrete things that must be done to make this real. That is what we can contribute, is how do we help the president convert his dream into a reality. And that, unfortunately, is hard work for you and me and people like us to say, change X, fix Y, stop doing Z, and that's for example. So, for example, if we take the state-owned enterprises, and I'm giving you the favorite example, South African Airways. We sit here with this ridiculous old apartheid dinosaur. We pour 5 billion rand a year down this bottomless pit. We keep changing the leadership. We keep changing the turnaround plans. There have been about 15 turnaround plans.
Nothing improves.
Meaningless. It is time to say enough. And what he should say is we are now going to not just have new leadership. We've had it all the time. It happens year after year after year. We are now going to fix the rules of the game. We are going to get rid of the ones, as Nene said, that we don't need, and we are going to get the ones that we do need, like Eskom, to function, and Nexa, which has been shut down by regulation for over a year, to start operating again. He can step in and say, fix the ones that are fixable, shut the ones that aren't.
And that's where we're going to leave it for tonight. Thanks very much for coming through. Louw, who of course is the executive director of the Free Market Foundation.